We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on today's program. In a surprise upset, Pita Limjaroenrat, the leader of the Move Forward Party, failed to win enough votes in Parliament to become Prime Minister of Thailand. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met in Jakarta for talks that were largely overshadowed by a hacking row. Thailand's Foreign Minister Don Pramudwinai surprised ASEAN participants by disclosing that he had personally met with Myanmar's ousted democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi in the country's capital, Naypyidaw. Now, he stated that his engagements with the Myanmar junta are aimed at finding a solution and understanding the situation. Also today, ASEAN and China have reached an agreement on guidelines aimed at expediting the negotiation of a code of conduct for the South China Sea. In a surprise upset, Pita Limjaroenrat, the leader of the Move Forward Party, failed to win enough votes in Parliament to become Prime Minister of Thailand. Limjaroenrat won the most votes in the May 14 election, but he was unable to secure enough support from the unelected Senate, which is dominated by supporters of the military. The Senate voted 182 to 324 against Limjaroenrat, with 199 abstentions. He needed 375 votes to become Prime Minister. Limjaroenrat has said he will not give up.
With the results of what happened in the Parliament today, I accept it, but I'm not giving up. In very short, I accepted that I couldn't reach 376. I got 324, and there's 200 abstains. I also accepted that it's below expectations in the sense that a lot of people didn't come to become quorum, as well as not voting as they wish. And I understand that there's a lot of pressure on them, as well as several incentives that didn't allow them to vote in alignment with the people. But I'm not giving up. I'm going to strategize once again to consolidate voice just to make sure that we reach 376 later on.
Disregarding the parliamentary numbers stacked against him, Pita faces additional obstacles on his path to power. The Conservative Constitutional Court is currently addressing two complaints against him. One complaint alleges that he holds shares in a defunct media company, while the other argues that Move Forward's proposal to amend the strict royal defamation laws, which have resulted in the imprisonment of numerous monarchy critics, is an attempt to overthrow Thailand's entire political order. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met in Jakarta for talks that were largely overshadowed by a hacking row. Now, Blinken warned Wang that the United States would take appropriate action to hold those responsible for the hacking accountable, after Microsoft said this week that Chinese hackers had targeted U.S. government sites. The two diplomats also discussed other issues, including the need to keep channels of communication open between their militaries and the importance of maintaining peace and stability over Taiwan. However, the hacking row cast a shadow over the talks, and it was unclear whether any progress had been made on any of the other issues. Blinken and Wang met for more than an hour and a half on the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Foreign Ministers meeting in Jakarta. Secretary Blinken hasn't yet achieved a crucial goal of resuming dialogue with the Chinese military, which is deemed essential in preventing disagreements from escalating into a full-blown confrontation. Emphasizing the urgency of maintaining open channels of communication, the second U.S. official stated that the objective is yet to be realized. China has demanded that the U.S. lift sanctions on its Defense Minister Li Shangfu, imposed due to weapons purchases from Russia. Myanmar continues to face the devastating impact of deadly violence following a military coup that overthrew the government led by Aung San Suu Kyi over 2 years ago. Now, during a recent meeting, Thailand's Foreign Minister Don Pramudwinai surprised participants by disclosing that he had personally met with Myanmar's ousted democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi in the country's capital, Naypyidaw. Now, in an effort to address the ongoing crisis, he stated that his engagements with the Myanmar junta are aimed at finding a solution and understanding the situation.
These 3 meetings only invite all other ASEAN ministers who are interested to talk to the Myanmar, to find out what's happening. We facilitate that kind of meeting. So the 3rd meeting was in Pattaya. Allowing countries to find out more from Myanmar.
Last month, Thailand hosted the foreign minister of the junta for controversial informal talks, which resulted in a division within the ASEAN bloc. ASEAN chair Indonesia and Malaysia did not attend these talks, while Cambodia sent a foreign ministry official. Thailand's approach has faced criticism, with concerns raised about its potential to undermine ASEAN centrality.
People who are ready to come, they came. Who are not ready to come would opt out. But it's not the ASEAN meetings, because this is our own initiative. Why? Because we have a long border with Myanmar, 2,400. Like Indonesia, you are far away from Myanmar. You don't know what's happening on a daily basis. But we are affected. India affected. Countries bordering Myanmar are all affected. The transnational crimes are increasing.
The Philippines foreign minister confirmed that Minister Don briefed ASEAN ministers on his meeting with Suu Kyi. However, he reiterated that any independent efforts to restart the peace process should align with the 5-point consensus.
Well, we feel that any initiative should be consistent with the 5-point consensus. But of course, this was mainly, I think he traveled there to meet with them, the leaders of Myanmar. So he just reported.
And he met face to face, sir, no?
That's my understanding.
So, I mean, your personal comments.
It's good to hear. And it's, she used to attend our meetings, so it's nice to hear.
Indonesia's top diplomat reiterated the bloc's stance, highlighting that a resumption of dialogue between Myanmar's warring parties and the establishment of a negotiated political agreement are the only viable paths to bring an end to the turmoil that has persisted for over 2 years.
Bahasan dalam retreat dilakukan dengan sangat terbuka. Dan sebagian besar diskusi terkait dengan implementasi 5 point of consensus. Jadi walaupun ada 2 agenda, tetapi sebagian besar diskusi dilakukan dalam rangka membahas implementasi 5 point of consensus.
Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has openly voiced his frustrations earlier, highlighting that approximately 200,000 individuals have sought refuge in Malaysia to escape the turmoil in Myanmar. In a video posted on his Twitter account, Anwar Ibrahim voiced his disillusionment regarding ASEAN's limited effectiveness in addressing critical matters, citing the bloc's adherence to the principle of non-intervention, commonly known as the ASEAN Way. He expressed his disappointment with the bloc's inability to tackle significant issues due to the constraints imposed by this principle. More developments from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which has reaffirmed its support for the Philippines' candidacy for a seat on the UN Security Council for the 2027-2028 term. Following a meeting among top diplomats, the 10-member bloc issued a joint statement expressing their commitment to coordinating and providing mutual support for member states' candidacies in regional and international organizations. Notably, ASEAN reiterated its strong support for the Philippines to secure a non-permanent member seat on the UNSC during the 2027-2028 period. In addition to the Philippines' candidacy, ASEAN also voiced its support for Indonesia and Thailand in their respective bids for the UN Human Rights Council. Indonesia seeks to secure a seat for the 2024-2026 term, while Thailand aims for the 2025-2027 term. President Marcos Jr. had initially appealed to UN members to back the Philippines' bid for a Security Council seat during his speech at the 77th UN General Assembly. Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Eduardo de Vega emphasized the importance of the Philippines' engagement in significant dialogues, debates, and votes on critical security issues as part of its campaign for a seat in the UNSC. It's worth noting that the Philippines previously served as a member of the Security Council in 2005 and has been elected a total of 6 times in 1957, 1963, 1980, 1981, 2004, and 2005. And more update on the planned release of treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. At a meeting of foreign ministers from ASEAN member countries, China and South Korea held today, Japan assured that the release would be safe despite concerns raised by neighboring countries. According to the Japanese Foreign Ministry, Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi made it clear that Japan will discharge the water in accordance with international standards and customs. The ministry stated that no participants at the meeting explicitly opposed the plan except for China, which has consistently urged Japan not to proceed with the discharge. During the meeting, Hayashi presented the International Atomic Energy Agency's assessment report from last week, highlighting that China's claim is not based on scientific grounds. Chinese top diplomat Wang Yi used the term contaminated water instead of treated water, which the Japanese government uses. In response, Hayashi emphasized the rigorous treatment process the water undergoes, removing most of the radionuclides except for tritium. The meeting between Japan and China occurred amid ongoing disagreements over the planned discharge of the treated water into the Pacific Ocean. The Fukushima nuclear plant suffered extensive damage following a devastating earthquake and tsunami in March 2011. Now today, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and China have reached an agreement on guidelines aimed at expediting the negotiation of a code of conduct for the South China Sea. Now, this development took place during a meeting in Jakarta between China's top diplomat Wang Yi and ASEAN's foreign ministers.
To bolster partnership that advance a paradigm of inclusivity and openness, respect international law, promotes habit and collaboration. For our relation to grow stronger, we must work harder. We want China to be a staunch ASEAN partner in maintaining an open and inclusive regional architecture. Only through this, we can attain win-win cooperation for the sake of common peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. And lastly, ICON, on China's continued support for the concrete implementation of the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, including the upcoming IPIF in September. Let us solidify our cooperation and further strengthen partnership to forge mutually beneficial partnership that brings benefit to our region and beyond.
Now, while specific details of the guidelines were not disclosed, the adoption of these guidelines signifies progress in addressing the complexities surrounding the South China Sea issue. The South China Sea is a region of high contention with overlapping territorial claims, and China asserts significant territorial claims over most of the South China Sea, while ASEAN member states, including Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, also have their own claims. Now, although Indonesia, the current chair of ASEAN, is not directly involved in the territorial disputes in the South China Sea, it has previously clashed with China over fishing rights near its Natuna Islands, located in close proximity to the disputed waters. Now, China's top diplomat Wang Yi expressed his approval of the Code of Conduct guidelines and highlighted the importance of trade talks. He also reassured that China will continue to play a constructive role in the region. He said, in light of the complex and profound changes in the international and regional situation, China is ready to collaborate with ASEAN to cherish the fruitful results of bilateral cooperation. Today, foreign ministers from Japan and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations expressed their shared aspirations to enhance their long-standing friendship and elevate their relationship to a more strategic level. The ministers gathered in Jakarta and discussed plans for a special summit in Tokyo later this year to commemorate 50 years of diplomatic ties.
We value Japan's view that ASEAN matters. Japan's continued support for ASEAN centrality, ASEAN-centered and rule-based regional architecture, and the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific have contributed to durable peace and shared prosperity in our region and beyond. The establishment of an ASEAN-Japan comprehensive strategic partnership will be another important milestone in our relations.
Japan is the first country in the world to establish dialogue relations with ASEAN back in 1973. For the last half-century since then, Japan and ASEAN have been working together, not just as close business partners, but also as true friends with heart-to-heart relations for peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. We have also helped each other hand in hand to overcome difficult times such as the ASEAN financial crisis, the Indian Ocean tsunami, the Great East Japan earthquake, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Japan will welcome the ASEAN leaders to Tokyo and hold the commemorative summit from 16th to 18th December. At the commemorative summit, we would like to jointly announce a vision that set out the broad direction of Japan-ASEAN relations.
In addition to discussions on the commemorative summit, the ministers engaged in talks regarding the situation in the East and South China Seas. Minister Hayashi emphasized the importance of making claims about maritime interests and activities in accordance with international law. Though not explicitly mentioned, this statement alluded to concerns surrounding China's assertive actions in both military and economic realms. Now, today, the World Health Organization has declared that aspartame, an artificial sweetener widely used in diet drinks and low-sugar foods, could possibly cause cancer.
Every 5 years, we convene a group of independent experts who come together to look at a list of agents that have been nominated by the general public, by the scientific community, and the public health communities to look at agents that may or may not pose a carcinogenic hazard. So this group met last in 2019, and they reviewed all of the existing evidence for aspartame, which had never been evaluated previously by the monographs. And they concluded that aspartame should be evaluated with high priority in the next 5 years on the basis of new evidence from studies of cancer in experimental animals and new epidemiological studies of human cancer. There were a number of cancer findings that were emerging from this set of studies, and most of them were conducted since the year 2005, but all the way up until 2022. And the evidence was strongest for a carcinogenic effect for a type of liver cancer called hepatocellular carcinoma. There were some sporadic positive findings for other cancer sites like breast, obesity-related cancers, and some forms of leukemia. However, those findings were not as consistent as the findings for this type of liver cancer. In our view, this Group 2B classification for aspartame, with limited evidence for hepatocellular carcinoma in humans and limited evidence for cancer in experimental animals and limited mechanistic evidence, strongly suggests that we need additional research to better understand whether aspartame poses a carcinogenic hazard. There are a number of different research avenues that could be pursued, and some of the most interesting ones are about possible mechanisms of carcinogenesis that might be a bit unique to artificial sweeteners and don't involve traditional modes of action. IARC Monographs Working Group concluded that there was, in fact, limited evidence even for this form of liver cancer, hepatocellular carcinoma. There were positive findings in 3 separate studies. These were the only available studies that looked at liver cancer, but the studies had some methodological limitations that prevented drawing a very firm conclusion that indeed they demonstrated carcinogenicity. And so the working group concluded that the evidence was limited. Now this means that the strength of evidence is not as strong as one would want in order to make a firm recommendation about, yes, aspartame does cause cancer. So instead, the conclusion was possibly carcinogenic. And we don't really give advice to people on how to interpret that evidence. This is why it was so important for us to partner with JECFA for the evaluation so that they could conduct the risk assessment.
The Joint Expert Committee on Food Additives, which is the scientific advisory body that is developing recommendations for the Codex Committee on Food Additives, looked at the whole risk assessment procedure. So it went all the way from the hazard identification, considering the exposure in real life to the compound, and then concluded on whether consumption of aspartame at certain levels of consumption is a risk for health, not just for cancer, but for other health outcomes, particularly non-communicable disease outcomes. So at the conclusion of the JECFA risk assessment, there was no change of the acceptable daily intake. This is because the science, although was indicating some element of concerns, was not conclusive to indicate that these levels should be reduced. So occasional consumption of aspartame is most probably not going to be associated to health risk for most individuals. We are aware that high consumers are still not exceeding the acceptable daily intake. Children may be more of a concern, but occasional consumers should not be concerned about consuming some products, whether it's drinks or chewing gums or other products containing this sweetener. Our advice is that products containing sweeteners as well as products containing sugar should be moderated. And in children particularly, the early exposure to the sweet taste is going to track in adulthood. And I think it's important to be accustomed to less intense sweet taste. This is in general beneficial for healthy diets.
The FDA said it disagrees with IARC's conclusion that these studies support classifying aspartame as a possible carcinogen to humans. The FDA also said that aspartame being labeled by the WHO as possibly carcinogenic to humans doesn't mean that aspartame is actually linked to cancer. The FDA declined to make any of its experts available for interviews to discuss the agency's specific concerns. Tens of thousands of Hollywood actors and writers are going on strike at midnight Thursday U.S. time, effectively bringing the giant movie and television business to a halt. The strike is the first industry-wide walkout in 63 years, and it comes after last-ditch talks between the Screen Actors Guild, or SAG-AFTRA, and studios on their demands over dwindling pay and the threat posed by artificial intelligence ended without a deal.
So it came with great sadness that we came to this crossroads, but we had no choice. We are the victims here. We are being victimized by a very greedy entity. I am shocked by the way the people that we have been in business with are treating us. But at some point, you have to say no. We're not going to take this anymore. You people are crazy. What are you doing? Why are you doing this?
The strike will begin at midnight tonight, and all of us, union members, leadership, and staff, will be out on the picket lines tomorrow morning.
Now, the strike will prevent actors and writers from working on any new projects, and it could have a major impact on the entertainment industry. Popular television series face lengthy delays and major film releases could be postponed. SAG-AFTRA represents some 160,000 actors, everyone from A-list stars such as Meryl Streep, Jennifer Lawrence, and Glenn Close to day players who do small roles on television series. Actors say their salaries have been slashed and that payments they used to receive when successful shows or films they had starred in were rerun on television have disappeared because streamers refuse to disclose their audience figures. The cast of hotly awaited new film Open Oppenheimer walked out of the glitzy London premiere in solidarity with the strike.
Well, I stand by my colleagues. That's all I can say to you, really. Thank you.
Hard to say. Everybody's working very hard to make sure that it doesn't happen. If it happens, I stand in solidarity with our SAG other members, and we know it's a critical time at this point in the industry, and the issues that are involved need to be addressed. They're difficult conversations. I know everybody's trying to get a fair deal. That's what's required. So we'll support that.
And tonight we have an exclusive interview with a remarkable individual, Drea Castro, the Phil-Am director of Baldy for the Blind, a remarkable production that has captivated audiences. In a daring feat of courage and determination, a group of blind hikers embarks on a treacherous journey to conquer Mount Baldy, the highest and most perilous mountain in Los Angeles County. Now, this inspiring film has garnered widespread attention, culminating in a sold-out ticket at the prestigious Chinese theater. MJ Racario for the report.
Filipino-American documentary filmmaker Drea Castro making a lot of noise lately for her documentary film Baldy for the Blind. It was a sold-out crowd in the Chinese theater earlier this month. This is a story about 11 blind hikers climbing the highest peak in Los Angeles County. Take a look.
If I was sighted, I don't know what I would be doing if I would be doing all this crazy stuff.
I can still feel my heart bump, 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 bump in my head.
Nothing's impossible. Maybe not all of us will make it, but we will push ourselves further than we ever thought.
Here with Drea Castro, the director of Baldy for the Blind. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Finally, this is like 13 years in the making.
Yes, it is. It's been a long, long time coming.
What was in your head, your experience inside the theater with sold out crowd?
First of all, I thought I was going to have like a secret space off to the side, but people were actually standing on the side of the theater, so I couldn't find a secret space. So it was actually more than 450 people. It was crazy, and I feel so honored to be supported by everyone that was sitting there. It was exhilarating and scary and exciting, all of the emotions that someone would feel when you put out a 13-year-old baby into the world.
And what are the takeaways for this Baldy for the Blind?
The takeaways of my film is that there's a lot of different things that you can take away from it, but to keep going no matter what adversity that you have, no matter what mountain you have to climb, that you can do it, even if it takes 13 years, even if it's really, really hard, you can get through it. And just like Odette said in the film, you have a choice in life. You could either go through life being upset about your circumstances, or you can go throughout life being happy. And so that's one of the biggest takeaways. Like, you can choose the life that you live. And I've taken those words of wisdom throughout these 13 years. Thank you so much.
All right, we got the executive director of Film Creative, Mark Labella, happened to be a Hollywood actor, award-winning screenwriter. How are you today?
Man, we are so incredibly excited. This is such an incredible opportunity for the community to come together to celebrate a group of people that people don't normally celebrate in Hollywood. And so this is something that everyone is so excited about.
Absolutely. And seeing Drea's challenges, what can you say about her success?
Especially thanks to you, MJ, and thanks to everyone at Phil-Am Creative. We are here to raise the tide, right? And so that is exactly what we're doing here today, is we're raising the tide, not just for Drea, not just for the Filipino community, but for a community that is calling and screaming out for some sort of representation. And Baldy for the Blind does exactly that. Congratulations, Drea. We love you. And congratulations to you, MJ.
That is it for the entertainment news. MJ Ricardo here, always tuned to Net 25. Because we live in an extraordinary times.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Connect.